Well, hey, all, coming to you live from my home studio. Welcome to the Military Wire with Mike Schindler. I am, in fact, Mike Schindler, and this is where we interview some of America's most elite men and women who have served this country in hopes that you, our audience, will gain an aha moment that you can apply in your own life. So I'm excited about today's guest. Before we get there, I just want to put a shout out to our friends at Bone Frog Cellars and Bone Frog Coffee. My friend Tim Cruikshank and David Johnston started this company. Proceeds from this premier wine and coffee go to the Navy SEAL Foundation to help the families of the fallen SEALs. So be sure you check those guys out. Be sure you visit their website. Thank you to those guys for supporting the show. So I will say that if we learned anything in this past pandemic is our life plans, the things that we think are going to go as planned, can change. I mean, if we look at all the plans, the routines, the celebrations, the customs that people put on the calendar in 2020, most of those, if not all of those, got shifted, changed, blown up, whatever you want to use as far as the terminology goes. Not so different for those who have served in the military, because we can make plans, we know those changed, but for the greater population, life changed. And as the saying goes, there are two types of plans that might work and plans that don't work. So when life changes your plans, how do you navigate this without falling into despair? And that's the topic we're gonna dive into this time. And so to help me do that is retired Air Force Special Operations Commander and Defense Intelligence Technology Innovator, Glenn Ignazio, who experienced a life-altering event, but emerged out the other side stronger, better, and different. Glenn, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate the invitation and to definitely talk about this subject near and dear.
Yes, I'm excited. So for our listeners, Glenn, why don't you just give us a little bit of background? You grew up dreaming of becoming a pilot, a U.S. Air Force pilot specifically. Can't believe you didn't choose Navy, but that's okay. We'll let that alone. Your dream became a reality when you enlisted at 18, only for that same dream to be ripped out from under you 22 years later due to a horrific accident while training. Enlighten us about this. Tell us about this accident.
Yeah, it's crazy. As an aviator, you do a variety of different things, flying and training almost every week. But something that we do every about 5 years is we do the altitude chamber. So flying in special operations will deploy teams from high altitude, halo, high altitude, low opening guys jumping out the back. So to do this, we'll go in an altitude chamber and simulate hypoxia. So it's a decompressed environment, lack of oxygen and so forth. Like I said, it's a routine thing. And unfortunately, I got what's called the bends. So just like a diver comes up too quickly from scuba diving, those nitrogen bubbles form. Same thing happened to me. Even though we're at 35,000 feet, same thing can occur. So these nitrogen bubbles came out of the bloodstream, and it caused lesions in the brain and spinal cord. I lost some peripheral vision. The left side of the body is weaker than the right, like a stroke, but not from a bleeding. And the left hip and the entire top of the femur has been replaced not once, but twice. So you can imagine as an event like that, your flying career is pretty much over, and really had to start learning how to walk again. So it has been a heck of a journey, but so basically got the bends and an altitude problem. Yeah.
Wow. Geez. So when I apply this story to what's happened in America today, I mean, we're coming out of this pandemic. I mean, people are going through their own versions of life-changing or life-altering events. In many ways, they're just, attempting to grab onto some glimmer of hope, something to, push them forward to the next day, get that head off the pillow. And I think taking that first step is so difficult. So Glenn, how did you do it? Like here, this is your dream. All of a sudden it's radically changed. Tell us what happened next. I mean, did you get stuck in the funk, or did you say, okay, you know what? New day, new plan. How'd you do it?
I'll tell you, I went through the entire spectrum of things. I mean, the first thing is, the military career is over. That's all I knew. That's all I wanted since I was a kid. I can remember wanting to fly since I was 4. And so literally it's like overnight, your military career is over. My civilian career, I actually finished with the Guard in the Silicon Valley. I had a civilian job. That was gone. So, I completely lost that type of career. But here's the other thing: when you add up these surgeries that took a couple of years, I was on opiates for over 22 months. So going through heavy doses of that and getting off of it. So you're going through withdrawals just like anybody that's doing some heavy drugs. So it was step after step after step of challenge. But the interesting part was, and this is the thing that sort of rings true when you're talking about the COVID situation and everybody sort of, starting over, is I remember people asking, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do with your career?
Yeah.
And all I wanted to do, and this is really the focus, is that small little victories. I just needed to focus on walking again. So the whole
Mm.
idea of how do I answer, what am I going to do with this career? I just want to walk again. So, I just want to get in a walker. Okay. That,
Yeah.
that was my victory. Then the next thing, I just wanted to walk with a cane. And so what I realized is, we flood ourselves with these huge goals of how am I going to change this? What am I going to do with my life? This completely flipped. And hey, hang on a second. I got to deal with the here and now. And the smallest little objective, which was for me, just to walk. I don't do that. My career and what my future aspirations are, they really don't exist yet. So
Yeah.
that's what I did, to step back and just go one thing after another and have that type of awareness to simplify things. Do that little operational pause that, we hear of in the
Yeah.
military. Do this operational pause in your life. So
Yeah.
that's how I started establishing what I was going to do to pick myself out of this.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Commander Mark Devine, who does Unbeatable Mind, he talks about micro wins, which is exactly what you're talking about,
Exactly.
is developing those micro wins. What do you think is holding people back from taking those micro wins? Is it the fact that they don't know that we think too big, or is it that we want to avoid it and hope it goes away? What, because I've got to believe
I
that
see what you mean.
that people, you've come across people that have had other traumatic, life-changing events. Some excel, you're an example, and others don't. So what do you think the difference is? Is it mindset, or is it persistence, determination?
I think it's definitely a combination. Well, take a look at it. I mean, when something so drastic changes, like if it was my life where, people are having divorce, or if it's this COVID issue or their career changes, I mean, there is a shock value, right? So
Yeah.
that shock, and a lot of times, we go to that, fight or flight, but there's fight, flight, and freeze. And I think that that's really the first decision is, what are you going to do? If you freeze, you're 100% wrong, right? I mean, you go
Yeah.
left or right, 50-50, but a lot of times people freeze. I really think that a first step is that shock value. Like take a look at this last year. I just, some people lost their businesses, some people haven't worked in a whole year. And so that shock has to really be dealt with, and you have to focus on pressing forward. I can't stay stagnant and just think about what happened to me. So the first step is, what am I going to do next? And so persistence, never quitting, that in our career field, never quit, never quit. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you're walking, running, if you're just crawling, just take one step forward. And so I think there's the shock value, like I mentioned. I think it's pressing forward with the smallest little step, and from there establishing those small little objectives of what you're going to do. I mean, it is definitely a mindset, but the thing is that it's in your hands. Always expecting somebody to be there and help you, not always the case. If it comes about, great, but really got to do it yourself. So having that drive to just get yourself out of this, and it's in your hands to do. So, there's a lot of lessons right there that I sort of threw out, but really it's get over the shock, press forward, establish what you're going to do. It's in your shoulders. It's on your hands to make a difference, and set the simple objective. Even if you're in a depression, just get outside for once. Simplest things like that to start moving forward. But yeah, I hope that sort of explains a little bit of the mindset, but I think it's important.
Yeah, I think what you're nailing, and I appreciate, is really focus on what you can control and the things that you can.
Yeah.
Like, there's certain things that, what's done is done, and now, so what can you do? What is that first thing you can do? And to your
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
it was like, well, the first thing I need to focus on doing is walking, right? Step one is,
Yeah.
let me have step one. Let me get back to walking. Uh,
Yeah.
I, 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 I think that's so important, especially now. I mean, you've got this saying, I love that. In life, there are only small victories, which I agree with. there's also monumental victories, right? But
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to unpack that a little bit. So what do you mean that there's only small victories?
Well, I'll give you an example from, I'll give you a military example, all right? Very, very simple. It seems common sense. Hey, we're going to Baghdad, right? Preach the burbs from Kuwait. We're going to Baghdad. Okay, that's your big goal. That's your objective. Absolutely. It's important that you have that, right? Just like we were talking about, say for me, how am I going to reinvent my career? Or people, COVID, what am I going to do now? I don't have a job or whatever. So fixing that, having that goal and objective is important. Absolutely. And we didn't just get to Baghdad in a day. We took these little steps, X amount of distance, X amount of time and land we're going to capture. It's just like for me, hey, I can't even focus on my career yet. That's something I got to do, but it doesn't mean anything if I can't even walk.
Yeah.
So, those little victories, as you would say, it is important for people to define on their own. Who knows what that may be for their particular situation, but it's so important to take that step forward. And to me, it's like you make that small little achievement. Think about it. You have established something that you are now going to be motivated to get to. It is achievable. You can achieve it, and you're literally building your steam, your motivation, and your drive and your momentum. Hey, you know what? It just need to get that small little ball rolling. And by focusing on that, you're taking your step towards your big, big goal of your career,
Yeah.
fixing your career, fixing your finances, whatever. But man, you can't get there if you're not taking the small steps. Those are huge leaps. But how do you get there? It's small little stepping stones. And sometimes you think it's, hey, this is common sense, or maybe it's common sense for military, or to each his own, right? But the
Yeah.
idea is that a lot of people don't think about this. You know, I thought about my career. That's something that's going to happen months down the road, not right now. And
Yeah.
I think people get distracted. So there's a shock value of what happened. There's a shock value of what you're going to do. But here and now, right now, what does that matter? That's what's important, because you can't get there if you don't start this small little step forward. Does that make sense? It's just getting that
Yeah.
momentum and that energy and that little step moving. And I think people lose track of that. It's the big goal, it's the big objective, but not what it takes to just shuffle forward a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's identifying the purpose, right? It's like, okay, well, what is the big goal, right? What is the big vision? And then, what they call future back thinking, right? Seeing
Yeah,
seeing the future, look back, right? Now, what does that take to get there? Understanding that, again, two types of plans that might work and plans that don't work. So the
yeah.
vision, got to keep the vision, there. But understanding that you're probably going to have trips and falls along the way, and the key is to bounce back and hold on to that vision. I think is what I hear you saying is,
Absolutely.
yeah. So what are
Absolutely.
you
And
doing
the
now?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there. Yeah, right now I am in the process of writing a book and starting the public speaking. Is to me this value of what I've experienced. I personally have never wanted people to re-experience something that I've already gone through that may be a bad experience, right? Learn from it. So, I'm working on what I call failing forward. It's a phrase people have heard before,
Uh-huh.
but I'm trying to turn this into value to try to help people out, especially current day with COVID and so many other challenges that we have, both domestically and internationally. So I'm focusing on that. I still dabble in the technology world. So I used to translate technology to military and intelligence operations. So, you
Mm.
need a little gadget to look through a wall or something, I'd go do that. So I still dabble in that, but my real calling, the value I really see is trying to help people. And sometimes it's the smallest little things or the smallest things that I've experienced that has that aha moment with people. That's where I locked it up and said, wow, this is valuable. And I just want to tell the story, not for ego, but purely to just help people. And after spending a career in combat rescue, you move mountains to get somebody home.
Yeah.
Smallest little thing is going to help somebody. That's important for me. And I think it's time. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm really investing in it 100%.
Yeah. I love that. I love that attitude of I go, you go, right?
Yeah. Lead
It
by example, carry it forward. And
which
the
is,
same thing,
yeah, so needed
failing
today.
forward. Right. And failing forward. I mean, I always tell people, it's like, you learn more when you fail a test. All right. You know what was right. You know what was wrong. You ace a test all the time. You know the right answers, but sometimes knowing what's wrong is actually more valuable. Right. So
Yeah.
that's where the whole failing forward and so forth comes along.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's only failure if you let it sit long enough, right? Like,
right, right.
otherwise, it's a temporary setback. That's what I tell my daughters is like, listen, if you're going to give up on it, then you failed. But if you are going to do it again, temporary setback, learn from it and, move on. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So talk to me, because this is really important, especially from your perspective, knowing that you had, this life-changing, life-altering event. Um, you chose to take it on and say, you know what, I'm not going to allow it to define me. I'm going to reinvent
Mhm.
myself. I'm going to move forward. Um, what do you believe is the most important attribute for those who are transitioning from service back into civilian life? Because that can be overwhelming. Even,
Yes.
it's like you go, your sense of purpose, mission, identity, all that is upended, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and we transition close to 250,000 people every year, and they have these
Yeah.
conversations like, I'm going to make it, and then they get on the other side and they're like, holy smokes, what the heck just happened? So what do you think the most important attribute is?
Well, I definitely say is, you'll hear me say never quit, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But when you're saying that, I was just thinking of what happened to me. You're flying an aircraft and you have, $100 million of equipment in your hands and people's lives at the most minute decision you make, and transitioning all of us into pure civilian, or almost what you would say unemployed overnight. That's a hell of a shock. It's not just
Yeah.
people planning on this is a huge thing, especially when it's injuries. And so there's that shock value I was telling you before. And the idea of making that change and trying to press forward is I could never quit as long as I was moving forward, man. Sometimes I didn't even have a particular direction. I didn't know if I was going to go in this way or that way, if I was going to work on my technology career or whatever. But I just had to keep moving. And I had to change my mindset. It's always been a career of lives were on the line.
Yeah.
And now it's livelihoods are on the line. So instead of other people's lives, if I'm working in a company, it was livelihoods. My success is going to figure out if somebody's going to get laid off, or how the company is going to do whatever. Okay, that's livelihood. What about your own? I mean, if you're trying to take care of yourself now or your family, you get out of the military, a lot of times you have your housing and your food and a lot of things taken care of
Yeah.
for you. And all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, what are these taxes and all these things I got to pay for? So sometimes it's sort of like hit that reset. And we always focus on taking care of other people. I mean, our mission is that type of objective. It's a mission, or the people to your left and right. And I don't mean this from a selfish standpoint, but you have to really look inward and take care of yourself. And I think a majority of us do not do that because we're not used to it. And it's not selfish, it's not negative, but it's like, hey, that self-care, mentally, physically, whatever, is what you have to invest in. We're always thinking about the mission, we're always thinking about others, but hitting the timeout and saying, what do I have to do for myself? That's a mindset that you really have to change. And that's really what sort of got me in the frame of thought of, what do I got to do next? That's not how I thought for 22 plus years, most of my life. And it sounds common sense, but most of the people that I know in the career fields that I've been in, from special operations, enlisted, officer, that's one of the things that's like, wow, I really didn't think about that. Is I always thought it was selfish if I'm investing or taking care of myself. And no, that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
And that's the first step, man, is what do I got to do to take care of me?
Yeah.
um your experience of seeing a lot of people with what you're doing, and wonder how that rings true with so many people across the services, is how many people are used to doing that.
Yeah, yeah, very few, as a matter of fact. I
Yeah,
mean, it's like the stumper question, Glenn, is, people will come and tell me all their skills and abilities and all the stuff, right? All the horizontal thinking and training that they've done, right? And
right, right.
the stumper question is, well, who do you want to be?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's who you want to be. Yes. It's also defining who you are. I mean,
Yeah,
I used to tell people all the time, what do you do? I'm a pilot, I'm an Air Force pilot. And if you think about the service, we never say, oh, I work for the Air Force. No,
right.
I'm in the Air Force. I'm in the Navy. A whole different, you are part of something,
That's right.
not I work for a company. And so a lot of times it's like, who am I and what do I want to do? And it took me some time to really get the value of, like this. I want to help people and go forward. That's
Yeah,
been an evolution, but I really had to get an idea of who am I? I need to take care of myself and fix myself, regardless if it's physically or mentally. I got to have some kind of direction and start stepping forward. And you can zigzag whatever on the way as long as you're moving.
Yeah.
And that personal investment of pressing forward and just trying to solve those problems for yourself. Like I said, it's livelihood versus lives. And man, I've said that dozens and dozens of times. And sometimes that just little, click
Yeah.
really sort of gets people to it,
Yes. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. You're talking about moving off the X. Don't get stuck too long in one place. You got to keep moving forward. I mean, it's
Yeah.
so important. So Glenn, this is so
Yeah.
great. I want people to really dive into your story even more. So how do they follow you? How do they find out more about you? Where can they visit? Let us have
Sure.
it.
Sure. So have a website now, which is glennignazio.com. So that's GLENNIGNAZ as in Zulu IO.com. At the Glen Ig. So the Instagram, the at the Glen IG. Ig was my call sign. So
Hmm.
they never could pronounce the last name for some reason. So Ig was as far as I got. I was like, okay, people. But at the Glen Ig. And the same thing, the Glen Egg on Facebook. So we have the whole social media thing out there now and starting off and telling that story. And I hope to have the book finished this year. So got some great ghostwriters and publishing agents helping me out. So we're really trying to push this forward and get into public speaking and really just try to invest in people,
That's so great. Well, Glenn, when the book comes out, we'll have to have you back on the show so that we can talk about the book as well. So yeah,
Sounds good to me, man. Sounds great.
that would be great. So if you want to follow Glenn, be sure you check out his handles and his website. Be sure that you get that done. And for those of you who are looking to discover and deploy your greatest gifts in family, work, and life, reach out to us if you want to start exploring that venue at operationmilitaryfamily.com. Glenn, I just want to say thank you for being a part of the show. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for the tips. I think these are practical, tactical tips that people can deploy easily. So thank you for sharing those.
Absolutely. It's a transition from tactical to practical, right? So thanks a
Amen.
lot for your time. I appreciate it, man.
You bet. Thanks, Glenn.
Awesome. Take care.